Hello, everyone. Welcome to Synchronic Saturdays with Meghan and Crystal. Today we are going to be wrapping up our this is going to be our fourth video on Introverted Intuition. And if we are going to be talking about the spectrum of how Introverted Intuition could look at its worst and at its best. If you are confused by what we mean by high vibe and low vibe, go watch or listen to episode 14. And in episode 20, we talked about how all of NI, no matter where it is on the spectrum, is seeking to understand. In episode 21, Crystal sort of unpacked and we debunked some things that we might need to, some noise that we might need to get rid of before diving in deeper to NI. And then in our last episode, episode 22, we talked about the lower vibe of NI and how it can sometimes feel like a black hole that just lacks understanding. So today we're going to be talking about the high vibe of Introverted Intuition and NJs at their best, or perhaps anyone, whether you're using NI as a tool, whether it's in your shadow function, wherever it is, how at its best, it is just the sort of pinnacle of understanding. That's why you might hear of them as being wise or just super psychic or things like that. Really what we're talking about is really understanding. So that's enough of an intro. How's it going, Crystal?
Going well terribly today because I lost my headphones and for some reason it's like bugging me more than usual. Like whenever I lose my headphones, I always have this weird like fucking like existential crisis where I beat myself up for like losing things or something. It's interesting because I feel like an NI user wouldn't do what I do with the sensory world, which is like nitpick and like and agonize over like things. Because you would probably say, I'm like, well, you have enough money to go get new ones. Like, what's the big deal? And for me,
I get mad at myself for losing things though too, but I think that I can just sort of be like, well, it has to be somewhere. Or if you don't know if it has to be somewhere, if you think that you left it somewhere, I probably would just assume that I lost it because I suck at things. And I always, like maybe you left it in at a coffee shop or something.
Yeah, so it's like, but see, for me, it's like, I don't, like, I guess, like, I replay where I was and freak out that I can't remember the
yeah, see, I don't replay. I just, like, look around the places that it could be, and if it's not in those places, I just am like, well, fuck me. I suck. I better go get another one.
Yeah, and then you just move on with your life instead of making this into, like, this huge thing on who you are.
And another thing I always tell myself is, you know what? It always helps to have a backup headphone. So I'll just get another. And if the other one turns up, then I have two.
Yeah. See, I like wouldn't be able to get out of like, for me at least personally, like the kind of SI grip of like, oh my God, like why? Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And all the other scenarios. And so to segue into that, I think high vibe NI is just really fucking good at moving on. And like,
interesting.
Like, I just think like,
just sort of on to the next thing.
Yeah, like literally, this is like about to ruin my entire day. I
think that NJs, if they are a lower vibe of NJ, could be like, what does this mean about me? Why can't I keep my life together? They could slip it. They could be also upset about losing the headphones. But
yeah, I usually see a lot of NJs not necessarily having some weird trigger around that, or like if they do.
I definitely have before though, so that's what.
Well, let's talk about the idea of like moving on, because that's like what inspired me.
Okay. Yeah, and also I know you have to leave. This might be a shorter episode. So the idea of moving on, is there any other sort of ideas you would like to get to in this episode?
Well, I mean, I guess like things about high vibe NI that I admire are its ability to move on, its ability to kind of gather all the insights I've ever had and like really hone in and be patient with trying to understand the whole picture.
I'm going to be nitpicky and I'm going to say organize all the ideas it's ever had and not gather. I'm saying that mostly because I know for those of you watching that follow like Dave's Superpowers, the word gather is sort of used for NE or SE. And the word organize is more like,
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more about like how it gathers with SE, because like to me, when NJ gathers, they kind of just sit there, or you know, they don't really do much, but just they sit there, they're unconscious. It's like idea, or not
organizing might be a more correct word.
Well,
I might argue.
But anyways, I think, yeah, like what else? I think NI is also good at. I think, yeah, like NI just likes to wait for clarity, and NE will like guess and check until it doesn't even, and maybe even overshoot and go past the point at which clarity might have been achieved. And I think NI is just more precise about that, which I like. And yeah,
so here's actually an example that I think would be good to talk about. And I am writing notes, and so we can get to the moving on thing. So this is actually something I was telling you about yesterday, is how a lot of times if something doesn't go as planned, perhaps a lower vibe NI can be confused and be like, is this a sign? I don't understand. Am I going in the right direction? Am I not going in the right direction? Like, what does this mean? And that can be
asking, am I on the right path?
Like, yeah, like absolutely. But then if something doesn't go as planned, like let's say you were planning on getting a job, or you're planning on moving into this place and being approved for something, and it was like a major life change that you had in your mind was pretty much a for sure thing, and then that doesn't happen, that can make a lower vibe and I'd be like, oh my god, what? But I had the realization yesterday, which this realization I think would be an example of higher vibe NI. I had the realization of, oh my gosh, every time that happens, really, that's just the universe preparing me for something better. That's just clearing out something that I was set on and allowing me to open my mind to something bigger. And so then I thought in my head, okay, next time something trips me up like that, I'm just going to assume that it's making room for something bigger, and I'm going to accept that and move forward. And so that's the understanding that I got. That so now next time if that happens, I'm going to remember that understanding and apply it. It's different than how, and I remember you were telling me that SI would sort of look and string the past together and be like, well, other times when this has happened before, it worked out okay.
Yeah, we would always know. We wouldn't have to consciously like make the understanding to understand this principle. It would just kind of like be kind of like automatic of, oh, we would just look to the past. But you would have to have the understanding, like almost the algorithm of like, okay, because you can't literally look to the past. Like, you know, you don't physically have that ability to like look at these memories and comb through similar instances. So because I only know to look to other instances before, because that was something I learned, you know, in my development as someone with SI. I learned to just look back and there was like stuff there. But for you, you'd have to have the understanding of, okay, when this happens, I should just apply this rule, which is kind of how I am with like logic too, in a way. Like it's like I don't have like
gives you the puzzle pieces for your NE to play with.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but for you, what? Okay, to take the puzzle piece metaphor and apply it to you, if you don't have pieces, then what would you say you're doing?
It's almost like my NI is like my NI conceptual understanding of the world are almost like the pieces for how I respond in the SE as things come up. Like,
so you're not looking at the pieces necessarily. Like an SI user looks at pieces.
Well, I know you tell me all the time, like whenever I'm freaking out, like, well, this has happened before and you've gotten over it or something. Like, I don't trust that just because something else worked out in the past that is going to happen again. But what I do know is that I can choose how I respond when things happen. And so in my mind, it's sort of like the right answer to keep me on the right path is that when unexpected things happen, to embrace them. So now I have this understanding, and then in the SE, when things happen, I'm going to, with SE, embrace it. You know?
Mm-hmm. It's funny because I don't trust how I respond. I trust things to pop up again, but I don't trust how I respond to change them.
And that's sort of how, and we'll talk about this more in other videos, but SE directly engages with the objects around it. Like if this is an object, SE is going to be like, how can I move this object or influence this object? And it's just like, yeah, it's the object. It is. And what can I do with it? And NE is like more trying to conceptually.
It's like hands off, extremely hands off.
Yeah. It's like you're trying to do a sneak attack with reality.
That is so true. Also,
At all times.
When men who are using SE on me try and like almost like manipulate, it feels like it doesn't feel like manipulating, because I guess like that would entail they're being sneaky, really direct and aggressive. And I'm like, whoa, buddy, whoa, like you're supposed to like game me from afar or something. But then like when SEs say something, they're gonna rise out of you. I'm like, shit. And
wait, I bet if you don't have SE to move the object back in return, then you can feel really pushed around by an SE user.
Yes, and if you had SIU Connect just now, that applies to literally every argument you or I or any S user in me has had in our relationship. Like, hey, you're being too aggressive or something, because I'm not aggressive enough.
And then I'm like, well, you have the self-control, lady.
I guess I do.
Get out of it.
Because like, I guess, but then I have to like kind of sneak my way out of it, and when that doesn't work, I'm like, oh shit. So I think like,
I mean, a great example is instead of asking people out, you just like to show up to where they're going to be all the time until they get used to you.
Some of the inferior SEs, whatever. But anyways, it's funny because to tie that to High Vibe NI, High Vibe NI seems to like to be able to push its reality around because it still has enough SE to like trust in doing that. I think push reality around with your own hands. Like I think NE, I use my mind to like think about what it could be or how I could game my perception.
High Vibe NI knows where it's going. And okay, what are the odds that last week I was in the state of low vibe NI and this week I'm in the state of high vibe? Because I just had a really great conversation with my ENFJ friend.
Who was also in High Vibe NI.
Yeah, we were like on this weird wavelength of like, man, we're going to change media. We were just like, man, we know where media is going and we're going to do it. And we're just like, yeah, we're going to create a media company. And we were like, just like, so like, honestly, probably the highest vibe I've been in a long time.
It's also very visible when High Vibe NI is. And I realized, well, my SE isn't that great. So
what can you tell?
You know, you guys like talk louder. You guys are more
using more SE.
Yeah.
It seems like a theme of every function whenever it's high vibe, it has elements of the other end of the axis.
I mean, because you're not excitable the way like an ENFP you would be, but you're still like excitable, you know, like it's just different though. Like I feel like even when I'm excitable, I'm very self-contained, and you're like, that's right, I'm gonna like fucking pick you up and like throw you around. It's like how it
well, how does it look different from the way that SPs are naturally present and excitable?
Because there's like an ebb and flow. Like you're not like talking this loud like on every single word you say. Versus yesterday, this SFP guy was like flirting with me yesterday, and I was so uncomfortable. Like he just was talking. He kept making eye contact the whole time, and I was like, "Oh, like NJs know how to."
Question: do you think I make eye contact?
Yeah, like. I think you do, but it's not like in a way that's overbearing. Versus SE will just like fucking.
Well, shout out to Love Lou and Michelle Wilson if you're watching this. But I know that Michelle said in one of their videos, who's an ENFP and Love Lou's an ESTP, that she was surprised at how intense the eye contact was. And I was wondering when I was watching that, like if NJs have the same level or like. Because I think that I try to look people in the eye, but I also like don't want to make people uncomfortable.
Okay, NJs know how to do it to get what they want. You know, like they're not constantly doing it. Like I have like an ESTP friend and an ENTJ friend who are both interested in me. Are they interested? Like my NE is like, are they interested in you though? And I'm just like, for SE purposes, I'll say that they are interested in me just for now, whatever. But the ESTP would just literally, for no reason, just while I'm talking, just like look at me, like, and he would never not do that. But the ENTJ would only look at me when he was trying to really make a point, or like he felt like flirting with me in a certain way, but he wouldn't.
I realized why NJs don't do that is you were talking and I was doing this, and I think that NJs do make eye contact probably when they're talking, but when they're listening, they're like envision. They're
Yes, like,
envisioning.
that's so true.
My eyes are going that way.
Like yeah,
I don't
like,
look at people when they're talking.
yeah, like dude, when
I'm looking at the story in my mind of what you're saying.
because it's easier for me to talk to NJs than SPs, because when SPs look at me for too long, I babble because I lose my train of thought and their energy. And kind of back off on talking and just work with what I'm saying. I'm like, thank God, because this is why I don't think I could date an SP. I'd never be able to like be myself because they would just take up so much space. The NJs know how to like give space sometimes and take it back, but SPs are just consistently like big.
So something I've noticed about high vibe NI is that it's patient and that it knows what to do when things come up. And so like it is not tripped up by things. In fact, it's always sort of one step ahead of things. But even if something happens that they aren't aware of, they're like kind of mentally prepared that it could happen and that it's likely to happen. Like, here's an example is that my good ENFJ friend Brenna, who I recently did a video with, we've been talking about potentially doing like a show together. And we were talking about the name, and she had a name that was sort of with her business's brand. And we were talking about what if we use that as our name? And then we were like, well, what if we decide that we don't want to do this video? Or what if we decide that we are done working with each other? Then who would own the name? That would be a problem because it's on my channel, but it's your business. Like we thought through everything that you would need to think through so that whenever something happens, we would be prepared. Because we would hate to accidentally be like, okay, this is the name, and then something happen where all of a sudden, what if we don't want to work together? Then what? Who would the name belong to? Like, these are the sorts of things that we think about, and I think that maybe for sensors or for people who are not as aware of the differences of intuitives, it can almost look like we're using NE because we keep having all these ideas.
I was about to say it would sound like NE because I think people have a weird association with like NE bouncing ideas.
And I mean, we do use demonstrative NE, but it's for the purpose of the future. Like it's like we can ramble on and get off track and stuff similar to how an NE user would, but it's not the same. Like you wouldn't think of that.
Like not the frequency at which, like it's like, okay, like you could make the same argument for my demonstrative FE. Like people that just met me are like, oh my God, she's so nice and so charming, just like an FE.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, like my FI decided to just be charming. Like if you like you know what I mean? Like it's not like at all times. Similarly, you guys aren't like always NE. You're just using NE at that moment. So that's why it's kind of hard to type people based on that moment. But I think sometimes NPs, we look at like one action and we're like, that's who they are all the time or something, right?
That's
like
so funny you say that because, okay, shout out to Kokoki, Emily, if you're watching this, because that actually reminds me of, I was joking with her, if you see an NFJ in one scenario, you've met an NFJ in one scenario, you do not have enough information to extrapolate what they're going to be like in every other scenario.
Yeah, okay.
And we were talking about, okay, I personally believe that INFJs like dick jokes and fart jokes, like with their significant other. Not that I know from experience, but I think that they have this weird, like slapstick, weird, like SE sort of side that they are only comfortable showing. Like every NFJ probably has, or no, whether they actually have this or just like mentally, like a Finsta with like 5 people where they're like a completely different person than the person that you see. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Every NFJ has this like weird secret side, and I'm sure the NTJs are similar, but it's like, it's almost like we're revealing parts, whether or not it's going to be okay.
Yeah, like, oh my God.
Do you think NTJs are like that?
Yeah, NTJs are really sappy. in one regard when they get to know you, and then NFJs become huge trolls, and I'm like, please stop, please go away, please leave me alone. Like, it's like NTJs will let the FI out, and NFJs will let the TI out. Because think of how pervy STPs are, right? That's their
That's how pervy that NFJs can be.
Can be, dude. I was gonna say also, the point of if you've seen an NFJ in one scenario, you've seen an NFJ in one scenario. It makes you think about how I joke that like it's really easy for an NFP to think everyone's an NFP, because when people talk to an NFP, they have to kind of be like an NFP because
in order to keep up.
So I used to literally be like, well, I actually don't know what TI and FE looks like because everyone seems to use FI when they're around me.
You know what's curious? Or I think a lot of INFJs, what happens is that people just start dumping their emotions onto them, and then they smile and listen. But then when you leave them, they might go to their friend and be really funny, or like be like, oh gosh, this person just emotionally dumped on me and I was really uncomfortable. I didn't know how to get out of it. Like, not that they are being fake, but like if you only have seen an NI user like quietly listen to you, that's not how they are all the time with everybody.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
also, when you said you've seen this NFJ in one scenario, I was just thinking about like how this one INFJ guy that I kind of like and who I might think likes me acts different to me than to the people he just met than to his friends, and then I'm just like, man, yeah, this is only because I'm actually.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's funny because I actually think I'm the same person with most people.
Yeah, you are.
Like,
you really are.
Maybe that's why no one thinks I like them, because they can easily see that I talk that way to everyone.
That's very true. That's my cousin who's an ENFP is the same exact way. Now, that was something that was like kind of off topic, but my cousin was like flirting the ENFP, and she was like, do you think that they like me? They laughed at my jokes. And then my ESFJ sister was like, well, I laughed at your jokes and I don't like you, and you treated me the same way as you treated them.
I was like defending her because I was like, well, you have to play it cool, you know, you can't treat your crush too special where they get creeped out.
No,
like,
no, I want to creep people out. Well, I don't want to creep them out, but like you aren't going to know if you should approach if you can't tell if they either are interested or creeped out.
Oh God, shout out to my ENTP friend Carly, who talked about how she has like, she told you this thing too about the layers or the hierarchy of like secrets that she reveals.
Oh yeah.
To like
I
kind
like
of
that.
Like test your friendship like over time. Like I just don't, it's like not natural for me, right? I'm just kind of like anything in my psyche or personality is give or take based on how I feel at the moment.
And how does that relate to NI, or was that a tangent? Because
like,
I think we could pull
I guess like, well, we were mostly the main thing is that like NI, I think like the idea that NFJs show different sides.
Do you think NTJs are the same way?
I think they do. NTJs get mushier.
I'm thinking about my INTJ friend from high school, where we did like speech and debate together. He was like my duo partner, if anyone's familiar with that. And we were like so goofy and acted like the characters from James and the Giant Peach. But then like at school, he would be very like studious, like listening to the teacher or whatever. And then like with me, he would like laugh really loud or like just be like ridiculous. I love INJs are so hilarious. Like they like really, when you get them in a group, they're comfortable. They're just like can be so lively.
Yeah, they know how to be leaders too if they want to be, I'd say.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I guess I was trying to mentally make sure that that was true for them.
Okay, I think like we were talking about this concept because I think like high vibe NI, like that's like comfortable with itself, I think can like show, like it will still be showing like different sides and like things like that. So I think that was important to illustrate because I think like NPs especially underestimate how different NI can mold to its environment.
Oh, but yes, we definitely mold to the environment, and that's like that SE aspect.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, because I thought it was interesting to go into a little bit, which we did just now already, how, and for me as an ENFP, I stay the same regardless of the situation because I just hold on to my NE, but NI kind of will adjust.
Also, sort of like your bad SE isn't even aware of the environment enough to be able to adjust to it.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
actually, shout out to Kat, an ENTJ on Twitter, who recently gave me this idea. She was saying that she, as an ENTJ, she loves to go out and like with her friends, like go dancing or like drink or something, but she has a hard time being the one to be like, let's do it. But if her like ESFP friend or like her SE friend is like, let's do it, then she just will go hard, she'll rally, and she'll just like be there. But it's not really something that she will think to do. And then she said that like she might not be in a party mood, but then if people around her are in a party mood, that she'll just go with it. And she said that she used to think it was FE to like adapt, but that really it's the SE, the party, bringing the party in you. And she's like, my FI wanted to party. The environment was party. And so I was like, I'm going to party. You know, it wasn't like, it's not. And I think that ENFJs have like a reputation for being people that blend with the environment, but nobody really talks about how NTJs can also do that, but like only if their FI like wants to or chooses to. And like for NFJs, it's like only if our TI thinks it makes sense to do.
Yeah. Oh,
you know?
I also want just something, but like,
Mm-hmm.
like ENTJ is really good at business, but if it's like a social gathering, they're not going to suddenly just be like talking about work still, like
Exactly.
forcing everyone to talk about work. If anything, that's like a mistyped like STV thing almost. But like, I think, yeah, like NJs just really are like, is now the time or place for like anything?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now is now the time or place, and like observe. And I'm not like that. I'm kind of like, oh, like I remember like when I like if I do like PDA to someone with better SE than me, they'll be like, what are you doing? We're in public. And I'll be like, oh, didn't even notice. And I feel like no NJ would ever like do something that like went against the environment, versus my bad SE will be like cuddling up to you maybe too close or something if I don't notice it's like a professional setting, especially if I'm drunk. I was thinking how
Oh,
would
yeah.
ever make a faux pas, if you know what I mean.
Wow. Yeah.
Like seriously, it's like there is no introverted judging that they will value enough to disturb that physical environment.
Oh, and it kind of reminds me of like my INFJ girlfriend. She was going to go to some party and she wasn't sure if she should invite us. And she was like, I'm going to go and check out the vibe. And if the vibe seems like it's cool to invite people, then I will. But if the vibe is more intimate, then I won't. I think that's a good example of
Yeah, I would not
knowing
know.
how to adjust.
I would not
And,
know because I'd be like, well, there's some people who seem invited, but those people weren't invited. But then, like, I would be confused. I would be like, oh, I would try to observe the vibe if I knew what I was looking for. Like if someone gave me a group of tells to figure out the vibe. But
I think the thing with NI is that it, at its best, it's very in touch with where the soul is going. And this isn't the same as FI sort of desire or preference, because sometimes you're going places that you don't want to go. Sometimes it's a breakup. You know what I mean? Sometimes your heart or sometimes oh shit, this isn't the relationship to me or for me, or oh, this isn't the job for me. And your FI wishes that it was, but sometimes you can see that life is taking you in a different direction. I think being aware of the direction that life is taking you is that high vibe NI. And so it's sort of like the soul's desire, but it may or may not be you as a human being's desire.
it's interesting though, because I don't think NJs necessarily will like act like they're like upset about that, or I mean maybe they will, but like
Because it's what we NJs prefer going with our path,
exactly.
and
Well,
our
like,
FI or TI is lower down. And so our personal preference of the path pretty much is irrelevant.
this is so interesting. Yeah, because I cannot relate to that. Like my path,
Yeah.
it feels is my desire, like my feelings. So I'll always have emotional reactions to it. But NJs can sometimes even seem like robotic about like what needs to be done or like where things need to go. And I think that people will then be like surprised, but it's like no, they're just going with the flow. And I think high vibe and I remember like in an earlier episode we were talking about how high vibe or low vibe and I will still, you can't use the typical tells to figure out if it's high or low vibe, because even a high vibe and I user might not just feel like talking a lot at that moment. Like the way the
I think
vibe.
you'd have to know an NI user really well to know if they were high or low, because they might just be responding to you.
Yes. I was gonna say like the manifestation of how the high or low vibe NI looks is like really inconsistent and kind of like ethereal. You have to like use NI to gauge it. Like I feel like that was what I said in an earlier episode. But even now, as we're going through all these scenarios, I'm like realizing, yeah, you're right. Like if you don't know an NI user well, you don't know what their high vibe looks like or what their low vibe looks like. Like their comfort levels might vary. Like even if they're a high vibe INFJ, they could just be really introverted compared to like a more outgoing INFJ. You know, like it's totally different. Like all the INTJ girls I know are so different as people.
That
Same
is
with
so true. INFJ girls too.
Mm-hmm.
They're all so different.
Like some are really sarcastic. TI, you still have TI, and some are like really quiet and introspective. Like it's like so different.
Well, I think it's because NI is really honing in on like, why are you on Earth? Like, what are you doing? Like, what's your purpose? You know, and every individual has its own thing. And also, okay, I just want to clarify too that what you were saying earlier about how you feel like your desires create the reality, and NJs might feel like they're just going with the path. I think NPs and NJs actually interact with the law of attraction manifestation completely differently. And so I'm going to talk about that in a different video, but I really think that you're right and that is how it works for you, but that's not how it works for NJs really.
Yeah, it's really interesting though, because you hear so much about people talking about how your desire creates your reality. And I'm like, yeah, but also I think SE and NI is better at declaring things than me because I'm afraid to own what my desire could be.
I have a question for you. So you were talking about going with the flow, and I think that going with the flow is a indicator of high vibe NI. How is that different than NE? Because I have heard people who say things like, I used to be an ENFJ, but now I go with the flow. And now I'm an ENFP. You know what I mean? Like what's the difference between going with the flow and
the flow in like everyday life? But if you were to look at life in a general sense, I'm really rigid. And I think NJs are the opposite, where they kind of rigid in a situation, like, but in general, like the course of their life, they're going with the flow of life itself.
It's like a current.
Yeah, versus like, okay, for example, if I lost my headphones, like for me, like I'm gonna go with the flow of my day. I'm still gonna like, you know, go get my shit done. But in the course of my life, I'm gonna think about this forever. I'm not gonna go with the flow of, oh, I was supposed to lose them or something, like show me something. I would just be like, well, fuck me. Like this is such an indicator that I'm a shit person. I will like internalize that to like my entire like life's flow. So I'm looking at two different kinds of flows, I guess. I think when people say NPs go with the flow or something, it's like right now.
Really? You guys are almost like creating the flow or pop.
Yeah, like it's like, oh, like this person wants to suddenly go spontaneously get lunch, but I didn't plan for that. But I'm just gonna go because like, why not? Like that's like instinctive to me. I would never not just change my plan, for me at least. And I think an NJ would have to really consider if it was like worth it for them to like interrupt their daily flow. But if an NJ is like looking at all these signs of like them moving to this new place,
The high vibe NI is very intentional and makes choices that goes along with where they're trying to go and is not tripped up by things that seem like it's in the way of their path because they know where they're going and they know it's just a bump in the road. And
if all the signs are pointing to me getting into a new relationship or like moving to a new place, I could resist that. Like I wouldn't necessarily go with the flow in that way because I'd look at it if my FI wants that. But if an NJ is like, well, it looks like the wind's carrying me away from.
Yes, the wind. Yeah. And I predicted that you were going to leave your last job and you did. And it was because it seemed like it's like the environment was prepared. It's like, NI knows if the environment is ripe for something and it will plant the seeds when the environment's ripe.
Yeah, it's like on two levels. If you look at the level closer to the earth, aka the day-to-day like SI, and E does like go with a flow differently. But if in the course of life, I'm not gonna go with a flow just because it seems right. I'm gonna be like, do I want this? And I think NJs are the complete opposite, where day-to-day life, they're like rigid about what they want to do and carving out like some sort of routine that's different than, it's not like an SI routine, but it's still some sort of rhythm they go with.
There's
But
one more thing, or go ahead.
But then like in general, they're like gonna like,
Yeah.
where's my life going? Where's the direction? Where's the flow? And I'm
There's
not
one.
searching for that. I don't want to search for that.
Yeah, interesting. There's one more thing I want to say, and then I want to know your thoughts and then your final words, because I know you have to go.
Mhm.
So I think that people always think about SI as like the past and stuff, but I
Mhm.
want to just clarify that both SI and NI can be used as the past or the future. It is the thing, it is both. Because it's your perception on a deep level, which includes the past and the future. It includes everything you've experienced and all the impressions you've had, whether those be sensory impressions or conceptual impressions. And you can use both of those to predict the future. And so I think that just as SI sort of gets better with time, I think NI also gets better with time, but that we forget this. And so if you're an NJ watching, I guess I'm just saying like, now, okay, like I came up with the understanding that when things happen, I should embrace them or whatever. That might sound very basic, but like over time, if you have that understanding and then you apply the understanding the next time it happens, that understanding is going to grow. And when you get older and when you go through more experiences, your understanding is going to grow and grow. And so it's going to like ripen,
Mhm. I agree with that. Like, it's like you don't understand things necessarily in an SI way too. Like that understanding building will lead to new NI insights, not necessarily SI insights.
Yeah, and the more you see that the picture that you're getting of the world is becoming clearer and clearer over time. Like I think a lot of NJs might have discovered personality when they're like in college, or like maybe you're in high school, or like if you're younger and you're just like, what is the meaning of life? Like freaking out or something. I just like want to validate you that like you already are worried about figuring things out and understanding, and like over time you are going to just keep understanding more and more, and that is going to grow.
Yeah, it also makes me think that like SI likes making observations about how everyone lives life, but
Mm,
NI has made observations about how it lives life.
yeah.
Like, and
So
over time, you will understand how you as a person work more.
do
Versus
you,
I feel like I over time understand how the world works more, I
yeah,
think.
do you agree that high vibe NI is also more patient?
Yes, I think so. It'll be patient. I think low vibe NI is like the least patient of anything. And then NI is a high, like so like wise and able to just like take shit, right?
It really is. It really can be very wise and tuned into the very specific frequency that you're trying to go for.
Yeah, basically.
So, okay, well, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Ooh, well, I think that the last thing I was going to say is that high vibe NI, as I said earlier, is able to move on because it has patience. Because of that understanding, I think, of that it's just going with the flow of life. And you remember that principle a lot when you're high. And I don't think like other types necessarily get to appreciate that. Because to flow with life, you have to understand the life you have lived until now. That's what you have to do to be able to trust the flow. And I don't understand what my life has been till now. So I don't trust where I'm going, because if I don't understand where I've been, I don't understand much. It's
The
like,
NI I see is that you are this inspirational writer lady that like challenges everyone's minds, and you just sort of bop around to people's lives and like make them question things, and that you're just doing that, and that's your purpose. Do you see yourself that way?
no, I don't. I just
You're like, ha, ha, trying to accept
You're
the
so
NI.
messy at me. Like, to me, I just think I'm like a floating head who was lucky
Oh,
enough.
high vibe NI sees its impact.
Yes, wait, that's so true. Yeah, like I like get glimpses of my impact because I have, like not favoring fifth function NI. So I get glimpses of it, but I don't necessarily understand it. So it's like I don't even remember it.
Oh,
I
another random thing about high vibe NI, like, okay, so I have this new phone case, right? I think high vibe NI really cares about its environment reflecting their soul to like an extreme level. And I think a lot of NJs are really interested in fashion or like food, like the way that they express their SE whenever it's like more developed. It's like, oh, that's so you, like everything that you see them have.
I never say that's so your vibe unless I'm like really trying to embody NI.
Like, yeah, higher vibe NI, everything they own, everything they do is just so them, to where it's like, oh my God, that's so on brand, because their brand is the NI.
What do people say before brand and vibe? Like, I wonder.
Well, I feel like people talk about it a lot more these days, and I feel like maybe it's more NI users or something. I don't know.
Maybe more people care about NI than they did before.
Cool. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Well,
but yeah, there's a million more things I could say about NI, but we all just have to wait for future videos.
All right. Well, have a good rest of your day. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, and if you'd like to join our Facebook group or the Discord server, all those links is below. It would mean the world to me if you wanted to buy me a cup of coffee. Patreon below. I'm going to try and get better at letting people know that that's there, because I'm just afraid of asking. So
you do it. You deserve to ask.
I don't like to promote things like that, because I feel like I need to be giving. But if you appreciate this, it would really mean the world to me. So
yay, go Megan. Okay, bye.
All right. Bye. Have a good rest of your day.